Have you ever wondered if the man you call your brother is actually the one sharpening the blade meant for your back? My name is Tyler Vance. For 15 years, I ran a high-end restoration firm with my best friend, Elias Thorne. We didn't just fix buildings, we restored legacies. We were the guys you called when a 19th century cathedral or a colonial estate was crumbling. I handled the craftsmanship, the stone, the wood, the bone of the building. Elias handled the vision, the clients, the contracts, the charm. I thought we were a perfect arch, two sides leaning on each other to hold up the weight. But the weight was already shifting. It started with a late-night call from our lead foreman, a man who had been with me since I was an apprentice. He sounded terrified. "Tyler," he whispered, "check the structural reports for the Meridian Project. The steel. It's not what you ordered." I pulled into our headquarters at 2 a.m. The air smelled of sawdust and old coffee. I opened the digital ledger, the one Elias told me he'd cleaned up for the quarterly audit. As I dug through the hidden subfolders, the truth hit me like a falling beam. Elias hadn't just been skimming. He was replacing high-grade structural steel with cheap, industrial-grade scrap from a shell company he owned. He wasn't just stealing money. He was building a skyscraper that was essentially a vertical graveyard. I sat in the dark, staring at the screen. My honor was tied to every stone we laid. If that building fell, my name fell with it. I heard the door creak open behind me. Elias stood there, his expensive suit perfectly tailored, his eyes cold. "I knew you couldn't stay away from the numbers forever, Tyler," he said, stepping into the light. "But you're too late. The concrete was poured today. Do you really think anyone will believe the simple craftsman over the visionary who brought in the city's biggest contract? If the foundation of your entire life is built on a lie, do you burn the building down or wait for it to collapse on you?" I didn't rage. I didn't swing. I learned a long time ago from my father that a man who loses his temper has already lost the fight. I looked at Elias and simply said, "I'm going to fix this." He laughed. It was a sharp, jagged sound. "Fix it? You're fired, Tyler." "I've already contacted the board. I told them you were the one who authorized the scrap shipments to cover your gambling debts. I even planted the digital footprint. By morning, you'll be the villain of this story." I walked out. No boxes, no personal items, just my pride. I spent the next 48 hours in a motel that smelled of bleach and regret. I wasn't just hurt, I was hollowed out. But Elias made one mistake. He thought I was just a craftsman. He forgot that to restore a building, you have to understand every secret passage, every hidden flaw, and every weak point in the structure. I called an old contact, a forensic accountant who owed me a life's worth of favors. Within 3 days, we traced the shell company back to a private offshore account. But that wasn't enough. I needed more than just a paper trail. I needed a confession. I knew Elias's pride was his greatest weakness. He loved being the hero. So, I sent him a message from a burner phone. "The Meridian isn't the only thing with a weak foundation. I have the original invoices from the forge. Meet me at the site at midnight, or the city inspector gets them at dawn." I waited at the top of the unfinished 40th floor. The wind howled through the exposed steel, sounding like the ghosts of every honest man I'd ever worked with. Elias arrived, alone, looking agitated. "Give me the invoices, Tyler," he hissed. "You can't win this." I held up a thick manila envelope. "It's all here, Elias. Why did you do it? We had enough. We were successful." "Successful?" he spat. "You were happy with enough." I wanted an empire. I wanted to be the man who redefined the skyline. You were just the guy who knew how to point bricks. He reached for the envelope, but I stepped back toward the edge. What happens when the man you've pushed to the edge realizes he has nothing left to lose but his silence? "You think I'm going to jump?" I asked, my voice steady despite the height. "No, Elias, I'm a builder. I know how to stand my ground." Elias took a step forward, his face contorted. "You're a fool. Give me the papers, or I'll make sure the police find your body at the bottom of this flawed building. It'll look like a suicide driven by the guilt of your own fraud." I smiled. It was a cold, hard expression. "You always were better at the pitch than the execution, Elias. You didn't even check for the red lights." I pointed to the crane arm behind him. Tucked into the shadow of a steel beam was a high-definition camera, the kind we use to monitor construction progress. And pinned to my chest, hidden under my work jacket, was a live microphone. "The city inspector is already listening, Elias. So is the district attorney. We're live streaming this business meeting to the entire board of directors. You didn't just admit to the fraud. You just threatened to commit murder on a recorded line." His face went from a flush of anger to a deathly, chalky white. He lunged for me, but I stepped aside, letting his own momentum carry him toward the safety railing. He gripped the cold steel, gasping. You ruined me," he whispered. "No," I replied. "You ruined yourself. I just provided the acoustics for your confession." The sirens began to wail in the distance, climbing the city streets like a rising tide. Within minutes, the site was swarmed. Elias was led away in handcuffs, his visionary suit wrinkled and stained with the dust of the building he had betrayed. I stayed on the 40th floor for a long time, watching the sun begin to bleed over the horizon. The company was gone. My reputation was a mess of legal battles and investigations. But as I looked at the steel around me, the cheap, dangerous steel, I knew what I had to do. When you've stripped away the lies and the trappings of success, can you look at the man in the mirror and say his honor is still intact? The next 6 months were a war. The board tried to scapegoat me, but the recording was undeniable. I spent every cent of my savings on lawyers and structural engineers. My pride wouldn't let me walk away while that building stood as a threat to the city. I worked with the authorities to dismantle the Meridian. We couldn't save the structure, but we saved the people who would have lived in it. I lost my house. I lost my car. I ended up living in a small apartment above a hardware store, the same kind of place where I'd started 20 years ago. One afternoon, a woman knocked on my door. She was the widow of a man who had died on one of Elias's previous cost-cutting sites, a project I hadn't been involved in, but one that Elias had managed alone while I was away. "Mr. Vance," she said, holding a small, weathered ledger. "I found this in my husband's things. He was the site foreman. He kept a record of everything Elias Thorne told him to hide. He was too afraid to come forward while he was alive. But after seeing you on the news, after seeing you give up everything to tell the truth, I knew you were the only one who could finish this." I opened the ledger. It wasn't just about the Meridian. Elias had been cutting corners for a decade. Bridges, schools, low-income housing. He hadn't just been greedy. He was a predator. I felt a new kind of fire in my chest. This wasn't just about my name anymore. This was about justice for the people who didn't have a voice. I took the ledger to the district attorney. "This is the final nail," the DA said, flipping through the pages. "With this, we can move from fraud to corporate manslaughter. Tyler, you've done more for this city than any skyscraper ever could." As I walked out of the courthouse, I saw Elias's legal team. They looked defeated. Elias was facing 25 years to life. He had built an empire of sand, and the tide had finally come in. If revenge is a dish best served cold, does it still taste like victory when you're eating it alone in the dark? I sat on a park bench across from the empty lot where the Meridian once stood. It was just a hole in the ground, now a scar on the skyline. I didn't have a company. I didn't have a partner. But my hands were still strong, and my tools were still sharp. I started a small restoration shop, just me and 2 of the old foremen who had stayed loyal. We didn't take big contracts. We fixed old porches, restored historical doors, and made sure the foundations of family homes were solid. One evening, I received a letter from prison. It was from Elias. "Tyler," it read, "you think you won. You think you're the hero. But look at you. You're a handyman. You're a nobody. And..." I'm in a cell, but I'm still the man who built this city. You're just the man who tore it down. Was your honor worth the poverty? I didn't write back. I didn't need to. I took the letter and used it to light the forge in my shop. I watched the paper curl and turn to ash, the heat radiating against my face. I walked over to my workbench where a young apprentice was struggling to join two pieces of oak. He looked up at me, frustrated. It's not perfect, Tyler. It's got a gap. Maybe we can just fill it with wood glue? No one will see it once it's stained. I put my hand on his shoulder. I looked him in the eye, the same way my father had looked at me. We don't fill gaps, son, I said. We fix them. Because the things people don't see are the only things that truly matter. Your name is on the inside of that joint. Do you want it to be a lie? The boy looked at the wood, then at me. He picked up his chisel and went back to work, his movements careful and deliberate. I stepped out onto the sidewalk as the streetlights hummed to life. I was a nobody to the world, but in this neighborhood, I was the man who made things right. My pride wasn't in a skyline. It was in the strength of a single, honest weld. I looked up at the stars, the only lights in the sky that weren't built by men. I felt a peace I hadn't known in 15 years. The revenge was complete, the honor was restored, and the debt was paid. When the final stone is laid and the tools are put away, will the world remember what you built, or will they remember why you built it? Please take a quick second. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories about ordinary people finding unexpected hope, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement. Support us and subscribe to the channel. Your support truly helps keep these stories alive.